Hello everyone, this is Harmony. I'm in Perth in central Scotland and welcome to another book review video. Today I'm going to do a book review of Entry Island by Peter May. I put out a poll earlier this week asking which book people would like me to review, and this one came up top, so here it is. So the story starts with a murder investigation the murder itself takes place in Entry Island, which is one of the islands off of Quebec City, Montreal, and so the investigators and essentially most of the police people are coming from Quebec City. The main one of the main detectives, Sheem, I think is how you pronounce his name. He is the main detective doing the interrogating of the suspect and most of the interviews, because he can speak English just as well as he can speak French. By the way, Quebec City is, and most of Montreal, as far as I know, or a fair amount of it, is a French-speaking part of Canada. Anyway, the people, the team gets there, and there's a team of about eight of them altogether, and so Sheem and one of the other detectives go in and interview the widow of the man who's been murdered. And they draw no conclusions as to who is suspected to have killed the man, although, of course, because it's a murder investigation, the wife is automatically questioned and considered a suspect until proven innocent or guilty or whatever. So because she was also injured but and did not kill her husband, which she's adamant about from the start, then other lines of inquiry need to begin. So as a result, the neighbours and other people in the community are interviewed, and pretty much everyone else is ruled out except for the cousin of the widow, who is held overnight but then released because they don't have any evidence to actually prove that it was him. So yeah, while the investigation is going on, it's thought that the murderer might be back again to try and kill a man's wife. And so to that end, Sheem offers to stay overnight at her house and keep an eye on everything. Well, because of personal issues outside of work, he can't get to sleep, so he decides that he's going to go outside in the middle of the night and take a walk. And Sheem is attacked by somebody that he doesn't see, but thankfully injuries are pretty much averted except for some bruising, because the attacker is interrupted by a random person who happens to hear stuff going on outside and opens up the front door. So, also while this investigation is going on, the main detective, Sheem, is having these vivid dreams about his ancestor. One of his ancestors, his great-great-great-grandfather, who has the same name. And he remembers these diaries that this ancestor wrote that were read to him and his sister by their grandmother as kids. And he also knows that because they were kids, not all the diaries were read out to them. And he discovers that he and the widow of the man who's been murdered are connected through this family history by the pieces of jewelry that they have that match. And yeah, it bugs the heck out of Sheem because he can't wrap his head around the what happened to this ancestor, what became of him, and so on. And so after the widow has been arrested, still being considered a suspect for the murder, Sheem has to take some time off for depression and whatever else, because he's not sleeping, he's not dealing with anything very much. And so he takes like a day or two off and arranges to go down and visit his sister. And during that visit, his sister gives him the diaries that were partially read to them as children. And he finishes reading them and puts all the pieces together. Turns out that his ancestors and his ancestor and the ancestor of the widow in this investigation is are connected through their great-great-great-grandparents, because Sheem Senior, we'll call him, the great-great-great-grandfather of the widow, is so he was in love with the person who would become the great-great-great-grandmother of the widow. These ancestors were living in the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, and they got separated while trying to get to Canada to start new lives of their own, and never got reunited, and ended up in separate parts of the same province, but could never actually find each other. Well, so Sheem, the detective in the story, goes to meet with the cousin of the widow and tries to get more information from him about the family history, but he's not giving very much away, and he essentially refuses to take Sheem over to Entry Island from the island that they're on in their boat, because there's a storm coming and who wants to go on the boat in the storm? But Sheem decides, well, I'm just going to go anyway. So off he goes and takes a look around, looks around the main house, and goes down to where he's told some boxes of family history are kept in the basement, but he's thrown into darkness by what he initially assumes to be a power cut, but is actually the power intentionally being switched off to that particular house because everyone else's power is still on. So you get outside and while inside and back outside, he gets attacked by, again, the person that he can't see, but once outside and fighting with his attacker. The wind of the storm blows the attacker's mask thingy off, and Sheem then discovers that the attacker all along has been the cousin of this widow. And he doesn't get any answers out of the cousin initially, but then the cousin ends up falling down a cliff and getting permanently injured. While waiting for help, she finally gets to talk to the guy and discovers that he killed the husband and was trying to kill the widow as well, because mainly for the money that side of the family had apparently inherited. And he attacked Sheem because he assumed that Sheem was also a family member. Now, while this story was going on, when the detective Sheem was having these vivid dreams, I thought to myself, and because they were very much from the point of view of this ancestor, I thought to myself, is this perhaps a nod to past life experiences? Maybe Sheem was his ancestor in a past life. Now, the cool thing I like about the ending of this story is that the widow is released, and once the actual murderer, her cousin, is taken in partly to hospital and partly to prison, and so she's released, and Sheem is allowed to do the honors of releasing her. And until that time, she didn't want to really apparently know anything to do with the family history, but eventually she does listen, and by the look of it, they end up together in some form of relationship and go and visit the Isle of Lewis. Altogether, I think it's a very well-written book, because the book partly goes from the point of view of Sheem, but partly it's interspersed with extracts of this ancestor Sheem's diaries that were kept and that he eventually was given. So, yeah, I think it's very well written, and the suspect is not immediately obvious, because you start looking to members of the local community if you're gonna do a murder investigation, not somebody that lives on a completely different island. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed that video, feel free to like or comment or both, and you can subscribe to the channel if you want to, or feel free to take a look at the rest of the book reviews in this playlist.